First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
Hello, friends. Joshua here, and only Joshua for today's episode. Well, kind of only me, meaning good old boy Mike won't be around. But we do have several guests because today's episode is all about quote unquote mixed couples, artists and non-artists who are either dating or are married. This was an idea I've had for a minute. Always asking that question: what does it take to survive the modern day creative terrain, the bumpy terrain of the lives of artists? And we have three couples who shared their experiences with us, and I'm super grateful to all of them. They were open and just lovely. And so I'm going to jump straight to it because I'll let them speak for themselves. And we're going to kick things off with two friends of mine. I know pretty much everybody on today's episode, but of course some more than others. And we're going to kick things off with Melissa Perleone and Matt Van Gessel. Who are friends of mine and Michael's, my sweetie Michael's. And so I've known in various forms, Matthew, MVG for short, went to the School of the Arts as well. But a little bit about them. So Melissa, Missy for short, is a pediatric hematology oncology nurse of 9 years, and she's AFON certified. I don't know what that means, but go you, Missy. She graduated. She's graduating, from Sacred Heart University in May with a Master's of Science in Nursing Education. And Matthew is an actor, a director, writer, and clown based out of New York. His theater credits include The Resistible Rise of Arturo Ui, Truman Capote's A Christmas Memory, which I've seen him do, is lovely, Spring Awakening, and Planet Heart, as well as hosting a bunch of other shows under his alter ego, Dr. Pockets. In film, he's appeared in The Sudbury Devil, Bookworm, A Red Drop, among others. He's also a director, specifically film director, which includes Winning Streak, Grease Paint, and Michael Calciano's We Want Faces So Bad, which have played a bunch of festivals around the world. More information about him can be found at his website, www.matthew, it's two T's, Van, as in a van, Gessel, GESSEL.com. And yeah, stoked to kick things off with them. Here they are. The value of this, episode, which will come out on Valentine's Day, is simply that, we're just exploring this element through the lens and question of how to build a sustainable career, primarily as an artist. But the reason why this conversation matters is because, lots of reasons, inclusive of, at least from my perspective, how important it is to have people who get it, because of how hard so much of this actually is, which we'll talk about. But let's start with the most basic of basic questions, and pretend like I also don't have insight into the one relationship in this episode where I probably know more about you guys than I do anybody else. So this is but let's pretend like I don't. How did you both meet, and what initially drew you to the other?
We met for the first time at Michael Calciano's birthday party.
I've heard good things about him.
Yeah, he's not bad. Not bad. Pretty good. And then re-met again as extras on the set of a movie. And I think that I know one of the first things that I was drawn to was that we could just have a conversation that kept going, and wasn't work to keep chatting. And and I think also kids too. I had been doing clown stuff, and so we were like talking about kid shows and being like 30 years old and knowing the Paw Patrol characters or something. And
it's important knowledge.
Just little things like that. Yeah. And
well, I remember at the short film where we were extras in, I've never done any extra work. I haven't acted since high school. And I remembered him from Michael's birthday party. And I was like, oh, you're tall. I can hide behind you. And then we ended up getting drinks afterwards by accident.
Well, and MVG, to the point about the talking, about the able to keep the conversation going. And for those listening, I know this true too, that Missy, you love the arts. You love all elements of the arts. You know that you were an extra in that film by way of a friend, but meaning just you being a good friend and being there to support the film, but you love artists. And therefore, to my question about conversation, MVG, I've talked with you many times and you have a large, expansive, creative mind and knowledge around all things theater, film, etc. Why do I say that? Because I would also argue that it verges on obsession in a complimentary way.
Sure.
And therefore, did you find that you were able to have the same stimulating conversation with Missy as an appreciator of the arts, or did it just sort of like, just being a human being, you were able to have a broader perspective convo, if that question even makes sense?
No, it does. I think that there's kind of two parts to that, which is that, it's nice to talk with somebody who appreciates and relates to these things and knows about them, but there's a whole other level when it's so much more fresh than it would be with, say, the majority of my friends who have done a lot of the same quote unquote required reading that I've done when it comes to, like, they'll know references to plays and films and movies and stuff. And there's something that comes from being able to share it for the first time, fresh, instead of sort of being like, well, yeah, I know, having sort of competing knowledge. Instead, it's like two totally different areas of deep knowledge. It makes it more interesting because there's a lot more curiosity on both sides,
Well, I would argue that that's sort of you just said it. If you weren't curious, Missy, that might make it hard, right? Because I know what you're saying, MVG. And in fact, there's a big argument there for, like, well, it's nice to be with someone so in the know, and also maybe not, because there's a genuine intrigue, curiosity / one household, and you both live together now. One household, I would argue, bearing the brunt of creative dreams can also backfire separate from the curiosity piece, if that makes sense as well.
I think that passion also, like, ends up manifesting different ways with different types of people. And I think that Missy is very passionate about her work, but I do think it's different than the way that artists are with ours, we never can really, uh, let it go at the office, so to speak. It's kind of carried with us all the time by choice, and you know, I think that while you carry around things from work with you in your day to day life, it's not like uh, there's kind of this, a career in the arts is like grabbing water. It's like that you keep trying to do it, and you'll never really like get it perfect. But that's kind of the whole thing, is you're like pursuing this intangible thing. I think that like a less artistic passion is something that can kind of be more concretely achieved. And yeah, so it is true that like the very go with the flow, wind kind of taking where inspiration brings me. It's nice to have a grounding presence, when otherwise it's like if both of us were kind of doing it at the same time, there potentially could be colliding or just no groundedness whatsoever.
I think that's a good way to put it, a grounding presence. And Missy, for you, even though as a nurse, your world can be plenty chaotic and upending at times as well, but there are consistencies, right? Consistencies in paycheck, consistencies in potential retirement, consistencies in even knowing this is generally how my schedule works and the kind of work that I'm going to do. Do you find that you get just as much enjoyment or fulfillment from maybe Matt's more fluid schedule and responsibilities?
Yeah, honestly, kind of what he was saying, it's like my career, it's like it's mapped out. You know what I mean? I know what to do to get to the next level, and I'm doing it too. I'm getting my master's, but it's nice to like date him and refreshing because like he has a dream he's going after, and it's like he's going after something like you too, like so special, something that you're really passionate about, and it's just the most refreshing thing. It's like nice to think about. It's like you're not like stuck in the corporate world. You're not stuck in kind of like the box that I feel like I am. And I like my box. I love my box, but like I don't know, it's just refreshing for my soul to see somebody like go after something that they love.
There's a good analogy that I think about, which is like most people put on a suit, metaphorically speaking, for work. They put the suit on for work, and then they clock out, and then they put the clown nose on. Well, for us, we put the clown nose on for work. And so there's this desire for balance. And so when you come home, you kind of want to put the suit on. It's like that there's order in your day-to-day life that balances out the kind of like freedom that you need in the creative work that most people don't really get to employ in their real, their day-to-day lives.
Well, to say something about the carrying it with us all the time, there's an element of survival in there because things aren't so directly mapped out, and because we are in the business of losing our jobs, that there's an element of always sort of being aware, having our spidey senses out for potential, which is a different responsibility in a lot of ways. Has there been a moment when there was, let's just talk about the chaotic nature of schedules, right? Because the schedules are a joke. I mean, for many years, I didn't, I was doing a show on Christmas. The number of times last minute when I had to bow out of all kinds of things, friend things, family things. has there been a moment when there was a lack of potential understanding around the time commitment in pursuing this artistic work? And can you talk a little bit about it, specifics or not, and how you navigated through it?
Yeah, wait, no. So our first big fight was because he booked a play in Illinois, and I just lacked knowledge and like the reality of, you know, his career and your guys' lives, because we were going to move in together. And so
we had a plan to move in during whatever it was, May, or something, and
you would have moved in for 2 weeks and then left. And I got so upset. I remember I was crying so hard.
We would have moved into a new place.
Oh yeah,
that was the idea. We were going to look for a new place to live. And then I booked the play, and then I was like, well, so I think maybe instead we'll keep the lease on this other place. I'll move in with you. And I mean, I was only there for a week and a half ish before then leaving to go do the play for, I mean, almost 2 months, I feel like. And then,
but in my mind, I couldn't wrap my head around it.
It was like I was abandoning her. And I think that the, yeah, you know, and I think that it was hard for me too, because I'm just so, and have been my entire life in the world of like, you just, you know, if I get to be in a play, I get to be in a play, and so, and I'm gonna do the play, so it was like, you know, it wasn't even a question for me,
exactly,
whether or not I was going to do it or not, and so it was equally hard for me to reconcile and understand Missy's feelings, you know, and see it from her point of view, at least from on an empathetic level, you know, to communicate. But frankly, you and Michael were really helpful in that, because it's like you have a precedent and I think a really clearly strong relationship that could be sort of used to be like, I could be like, Missy, look at Joshua and Michael, and like Joshua, you know, books stuff all the time and has to go and misses whatever, you know, and this, and you know, in this scenario, it's like we were just changing a schedule. I wasn't, I didn't even I wasn't missing anything really.
Like in hindsight, it's so silly, because of course he's going to go and do the play. Like I know that now, but I didn't, like, this isn't part of my normal life. I don't have friends besides, you know, now the ones that I gained in Michael that do this. I just had no idea that this was a reality. It's kind of naive, but that was really stressful. And
I think also like communicating how important this stuff is to all of us, you know, because it's probably the same kind of thing that the family episode deals with too. It's like most people consume what we do as like, you know, entertainment, and as something that's like frivolous too, and like not important. And it's like important to, no, but I mean, it's true.
I know,
it's
I feel bad.
And so there's this kind of like, I mean, you know, I know people, we both know people like who are on Broadway or whatever, and their family or certain people in their lives still treat it like a hobby. Like it's like just a fun thing to do, because it is fun, but I think that there's a balance of that. And it's interesting that the thing about carrying it with you all the time too, like when I was a kid, I wasn't looking for jobs, you know, but I was like creating stories and doing plays and making movies with Legos or with friends or whatever. And that's kind of like when we first started dating, there was one day where I was like, oh, I'm going to write. And I think I just said, I don't even think I'd been sitting down for an hour before Missy's like, I don't think I've ever done anything. I don't think I've ever done anything like that. sat down and just sort of and for me, it's like a purging. It's like
Right.
there's all of these things involved in it that are like, that's compulsive more than it is. And that's not even me thinking about a job necessarily. It's on the mind always, like to create opportunities to act or whatever. But it's just a normal compulsion for me to like be creative and like be like, and want to do work on it in some way, which could even mean watching movies or like, going to plays, reading plays, whatever.
Well, Missy, I don't know if this is true for you, but it's funny. I'm in tech for this thing right now, and we were doing something. We were trying to figure out how to place the chocolate river, where it was going to come out of the pipe. And I looked at someone else, the choreographer, someone on the show, and I was like, this is what we do for a living. We're adults, like this is like we play with, fun little puppets and weird shit. And I imagine that, MVG going, I'm going to sit down and write. There's actually kind of something amazing about that. Right. I was like, oh, we're adults. And like, not that we shouldn't be doing that, but in this late stage capitalist culture that prizes dollars above all else, especially in America, it's hard to remember to go like, oh yeah, we are just people and we are out here living this life and to play. And MVG is someone who knows you and often refers to you as a quote unquote, I think I even said this to you, Missy, a lifer, someone who's taken it to the grave, no matter what the journey brings, that there's something probably quite infectious about that freedom to lose themselves in the art. But let me ask you this as a kind of tangential but related question. How do you handle periods when MVG is engrossed in a creative project and might not I don't know your creative process, MVG, but I know for Michael, for example, with this film that he was just working on, it's like, okay, no, I'm putting in nearly 16 hours a day sometimes. And when you were prepping A Christmas Story,
mm-hmm.
does the same thing happen? And Missy, specifically, how do you handle those moments?
Well, I think I could recite A Christmas Memory.
Excuse me, apologize.
Oh, you're good.
I think that's what you said. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's worked out right now because I'm getting my master's. So when he's doing his creative process, I'm just working on schoolwork. But no, sometimes it can get really annoying, especially if like he's like really in like a spiral of, I love you very much. Especially if he's like in a spiral of, just like wanting to really consume media, because I can only like handle so much. And sometimes I have to just like be like, not right now. Like I'm gonna go like look at my phone, or I'm gonna do a puzzle, to have some me time. But I try and respect it as much as I can, because like the thing is I have a lot of passions, but like nothing like you guys have for this. Like seeing how much you love what you do and you love storytelling and everything. I just think it's one of the greatest gifts, and I would never want to, make you feel guilty for it, or like bad.
I think that we also like artists in general can be very comfortable in their own heads and like alone and things like that. Maybe not. I mean, don't want to generalize, but like it's true for me. Like I can definitely, read all day, watch movies all day, work on the play all day. I mean, actually, when we were traveling to Illinois when I was doing this show, it's like, I think that every hotel room we were in, I probably spent like an hour before we went to bed working on the play I was about to go do, which was like was like an I'm plugged in time.
Right.
And if Missy had something to show me on her phone, it had to like wait, you know?
Yes.
And yeah, and I think that, I don't know, I think that that's something that if I was doing taxes or something, you know, it would maybe be a little bit more obvious that it's like work.
Yeah.
But there's something about when you're sitting like, you know, and you're going, you know, like muttering lines to yourself, or like, you know, looking at a action thesaurus or something. It seems like it couldn't possibly be like that serious, you know?
What would you each say to someone who was on the fence about dating an artist or non-artist, respectively?
Well, what I will say is, so one thing I've realized since dating, you know, an artist is the question that you guys get all the time where people are asking you, you know, oh, like, so like, when are you going to give up? What's your timeline? Like, what is,
Give
you
up,
know, like,
give up on your relationship?
no, on
dream.
your career, on
I
your
suppose
dream. Like,
people
what's your
will-
backup plan? And like, if this doesn't
backup
work out,
plan, sure.
like-
Plan B, whatever, yeah.
all the stuff that you guys
Safety
hear,
net.
yeah, like
Mhm.
I'm hearing now, and it's really annoying. So I feel for you guys, because it's like, I don't know, like, it's just it's a very invasive question.
Yeah, well, it's like we met some family friends recently who were like, "So you want to be an actor?" And
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh yeah,
I am an actor.
yeah.
You know, it was sort of like there's I don't know what it is, but there's something about it that kind of is.
People feel like I don't know, that they have the right to like comment on your career or what you're doing. And so I would say, as like a non-artist dating an artist, prepare yourself for that, because you're going to hear it, and it's very annoying. And a lot of the times too, I feel like it's done in
And
a very
probably
malicious
painful
way.
to you too, Missy. Meaning, if I were, I mean, I get protective over Michael and myself, but like if that were to happen, I would be quite prickly about that.
Yeah.
That would make me quite frustrated. So I understand your point of like, because just to say this out loud, not that you, Missy, aren't your own person as separately defined by Matt, but when we're in relationships with people, there are people, right? Therefore, that question can't help but also ding your own sense of, I'll say, credibility, Missy. Does that make sense what I'm saying? And Matt,
No,
I'm not
that makes a lot of sense.
I'm not saying this about you, Matt. I'm saying this about all of us. Is like there's like that element
No, I
of
understand.
like,
Yeah.
you know.
No, I think it's true too, because I think that one thing I will say that is, and this is connected to that, but and to the main question, like the joke I always make is that Missy's the first person that I've dated that didn't have a headshot. You know, and there's something about pursuing this thing that is within our relationship uniquely mine. And then by the same token, because she's like on the outside of it, or a part of it rather, but not doing the same thing, her advocacy of me and belief in me feels so much more meaningful. I kind of in the same way that it's like sometimes, you know, a certain stranger's approval is more meaningful than a friend's almost. That like I trust Missy's belief in me, and there's kind of because it's on the it's in a different realm, because she, yeah. And I think that's like what you're saying, like somebody insulting or not insulting or being condescending, meaningfully or not. Uh, Missy's support is so much more meaningful, not being a capital A artist.
Well, in some ways, you sort of also just answered the question in a different way too, in terms of the value, the potential value of being with someone who isn't competing, that's my word, in the same industry, because there's actually this removed support that doesn't necessarily feel put upon. Because I'm not saying it is, but I will speak for myself. I had an ex who was very jealous of me, and it was very challenging. I found out at the end of our relationship and in one big fight that they had actually auditioned for the School of the Arts 3 times, and that came out at the end. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense as to why things did not just that, but there was a lot of elements where the support actually felt false in some ways, like it was a requirement instead of a genuine, oh no, what you're saying, Missy, I see and lift up your passions. Well, listen, it's funny just to say, as an outsider looking in, and who met you both before you both met the other, and knew each other from different walks of life. I'm so happy that you both are so happy, and that why I wanted to have you both on is because I think you have a unique perspective, at least for me, just as sort of navigating both worlds and seeing that. So anyway, it's illuminating for me, and I'm appreciative. I'm appreciative of both of you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Always, Josh.
It's been wonderful.
Next, we have the lovely Regina Gotti and Clifton Samuels, whom actually both met when they were both still performing, which gives this conversation just a bit of an interesting edge, because Regina, who is Clifton's wife, now works at BBR Partners as the director of talent acquisition, which is a wealth management firm. And there she's responsible for sourcing and recruiting efforts across the firm. And for the past decade has been doing something similar to a number of financial services in New York City. But she holds a BFA in musical theater from East Carolina University, where, following getting that degree, she performed in a national tour and has done a bunch of cruise ship work, having visited over 40 countries. And she's still very much engaged with the arts, in so much as obviously just by proxy in terms of Clifton, but then also is part of a choir and works with her local youth theater. And again, I just find it fascinating, this angle of what we're about to explore, because it is a different take on the artist non-artist relationship with someone who still very much might identify, because this is the world in which they came from. Clifton has appeared in a bunch of Broadway shows, including Follies with Bernadette Peters, Amazing Grace, Mrs. Doubtfire, and most recently Elf. He's also done the national tours of Chorus Line and Urban Cowboy the musical. Oh yeah, Urban Cowboy. Wasn't that Matt? What's his name? That was a long time ago. Been in a bunch of off-Broadway shows. The Beast in the Jungle, The Crusade of Connor Stevens, Stiff. That's where he and I met. Storyville. Storyville. Anyway, and Twilight, the unauthorized parody. He's also worked, as you could imagine, ton of regional theaters, the Signature, the Kennedy Center, North Shore, Theater Under the Stars, Paper Mill Playhouse, Goodspeed Opera House, He's also performed with the Radio City Christmas Spectacular and the Omaha Symphony. He's also been on television and Feud, FBI Most Wanted, The Blacklist, Younger, Boardwalk Empire, One Degree of Misty, and Alphabet Boys, and in a number of films. A member of AA, of course, and SAG-AFTRA, and is a graduate of Oklahoma City University. And he lives in Jersey with Regina and their daughter, Liza, and their puppy, Reggie. Anyway, it's a super interesting combo, and I was grateful for their transparency. Enjoy. And wait, remind me of your daughter's name.
Liza, Liza.
Well,
easy enough.
I've actually, I met another, I mean, obviously we know Liza. And I've only ever met one other actual Liza, besides Miss Minnelli. Out of curiosity, was that at all an inspiration, or was it totally?
It was like half that and half my cousin's sister-in-law, who I just looked up to as a kid.
Interesting. So you knew another actual Liza. Fair.
Yeah, but only one other.
There was no even talks of another name. It was always that.
Interesting.
We didn't
Really?
even-
Like it came up and you both were like, oh, this is it.
She is what she really wanted, and I was like, if it's a girl, it's Liza. And then we had a name for a boy, and it wasn't a boy. So that was it. There was never any.
Amazing. Well, I always like to whenever I meet kids, the show I'm in now, there's a kid, his name's Langston, and his brother's name's Sterling, and I'm like, you thank your parents for these good names, because these are
Yeah,
good
they're
names.
good names.
You know, Liza's a good name. I mean, there's only going to be
Timeless.
one Liza in her class. You know.
True.
So okay, so how tell us a little bit about how you both met and what initially drew you to the other.
I was doing a show in North Shore. He was on North Course Line. And my cast went to see his show, and then we met at a bar afterwards.
Little mixer.
Yeah, and I don't know, there was like a weird energetic
Pull.
pull. And also I noticed in his bio in the playbill that he was from South Carolina, and my parents at the time lived in North Carolina, and
Uh-huh.
I had been previously dating someone whose parents were in Wisconsin, and I thought that was difficult for holidays. So I thought South Carolina was going to be
He was,
an easier.
he was already thinking about holidays when she was looking at my bio.
The ultimate planner, then? Are you the planner in the relationship, Regina?
I would say so, sure, yeah.
Yeah. The one who keeps it. Well, okay. Well, this is actually, as I was saying just a few minutes ago before we started, why I was especially excited to chat with you both, because Regina, you went to school for musical theater. And not only then, as you're saying, performed, and that's around the time you met, but you are also still engaged creatively, even though you work for a wealth management firm now. Can you talk about the moment that you decided, oh, okay, I think I'm going to step away from performing full time? And was it a conversation you sort of had together?
Shortcliffe was engaged in the mental mishigas that happened when transitioning out of the business, but I think I was really pleased with the work that I had done and had felt that I had kind of capped out in what I was going to be able to do based on my physical state, my mental state. I just didn't think I wanted to compete at a higher level than I was at the time. And I was like really pleased with the friends I made and the shows that I did. And it was great, but I wanted to make money, and I'd always kind of had side gigs and side hustles. And I just knew that the artist lifestyle was not what I was looking to do very long term. So in a way, I was like mentally very prepared to like put it behind me, and in another way it was just like so emotional to let it go, and sad because now I have to work from 9 to 5 or 8 to 6.
Well, okay,
Excuse me.
just to chase after that for a quick second. Now that you are in this 9 to 5, do you and having someone so close to you who is also so not in that world, although Cliff, I realize I don't know what you're when you're not performing, if you have another gig per
Yeah.
se, but do you ever look now in on what Cliff's life, who just closed a show, I don't know, month or so ago, whatever it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and go, oh, I missed that, or are you like, I'm good?
You know, what he does and what he's able to do by being in shows gives me the like show life that I'm looking for, like without all the terrible stuff that goes along with it. So it's actually a really like lovely arrangement. I get the parties, I get the people, I get the friends, I get the excitement,
Yeah.
and I don't really have to do any of the work. So it works out really nicely. I always knew that he would keep me involved, just being with him. And that I think also is kind of a salve to the wound of leaving the business for me, knowing that I'd still be very connected through him.
And Clifton, when Regina stepped away, did you sort of go, was there anything for you in that moment of like, okay, I like, I mean, you undoubtedly probably understood her decision, as we all go, like, what do we do?
Yeah.
But did you ever go, what is my future in this?
I think I imagined us like doing shows together. I thought of roles we could play together and like do
Hmm.
regionally, or if we ended up in a Broadway show together. And so it was a little like heartbreaking, but she always had like she even said it, she always had all these side hustles that made her more money than acting. So I could tell that we were raised two very different ways. My parents were like, train, go after this thing you love, we'll support it. Hers were like, what are you doing? Doing this thing, we're not going to send you to those schools, and you work. So she was always, she'd have a gig at night and was somebody's personal assistant, or was a party planner or event promoter, or doing something. And so I think I saw that her heart was focused on work, and the mental and physical toll it was taking on her was like not worth her staying in it. So I think I understood it. It took me a second to kind of go like wrap my head around it, but she already had like another job lined up. You were at BB, you were at the touring, the West Side Story
Oh,
company,
yeah, yeah. I
BB
mean, I was
promotion.
always doing like other side gigs and working for producers or, I did a million different random
I
things.
think if she would have looked at me and been like, "You better get your next 5 Broadway shows because I don't want to work," or something, I would have been like, "Whoa!" But she was like, "No, we're gonna." I remember us. We had an apartment on 44th and 8th, and I remember the day she kind of decided it was happening, and we were like hugging on 44th and 8th, and there was not a doubt in my mind that she wouldn't go and be successful at this next thing. And then I remember when that company kind of disbanded. I remember we had that same hug on the street. She's like, I don't remember these hugs. But I just, and then that's when you moved to the Araka group. The Araka group was
Oh
producers of
yeah.
Wicked. And funnily enough, when I made my Broadway debut in Follies and it came to the Marquee Theater, Araka got the merchandise. So in many ways, and she was the head of the merchandise of Follies. So like we kind of made our Broadway debuts together, hers in the merchandise working business money department, and mine
Hmm.
in the being on the stage. So yeah.
Well, okay. So you got, well, I do have to ask. So now you're in wealth management, Regina, and how did that even come about? I mean, did you have an
I
experience
always,
there?
even when I was acting, I would temp at recruiting agencies, and I always wanted to work in finance. I was just fascinated with like what do people do? Since I was a kid, honestly, like I remember being in a hospital visiting somebody or something and just being like, what's wrong with that person? What's wrong with that person? Just always like really like inquisitive about
Curious.
like people. And um I was working for a producer and I was like, okay, I mean, this is nice to still be in theater, but I like still not going to make any money. And it was kind of nepotistic there. And I was like, I gotta get out of here. And I had a friend who was a recruiter and and I was like, wow, like I feel like I could do that. It's basically corporate casting. That's what I call it. And I went to a recruiting agency and they were like, well, you kind of are in sales and business development. Have you thought of recruiting? And I was like, I have thought of recruiting. And 5 interviews later, once I'd assured them that I was no longer performing and I hadn't been for 2 years and that I would show up every day,
And
um,
not leave them for a regional gig.
yeah, they hired me, and I spent 9 years there at Green Key Resources. It was an incredible opportunity. I learned how to recruit. I learned this skill that then, when COVID hit, the business, most of the roles I worked on were in person in New York City, so we just didn't know what was happening,
Yeah.
with that. So I actually called a client of mine, which is one of these wealth management firms. Most of my clients were financial services firms. And I was like, do you need a recruiter? And they were like, yes, we're dying for a recruiter. And 21, 22 was like a super hot hiring time.
Mm.
And so I just like really got lucky. They had been a client. I'd gone to the same college as the COO, and he'd always liked me. And it was just a like relationship that I leveraged, and here I am. And I'm just like incredibly lucky to have this job. It's actually fully remote, and I get to talk to interesting people all day and ask
That's
them,
great.
questions about how much money they want to make and like
The
what they
curiosity still
do. And,
wins.
you know, uh, it's really interesting.
Well, somewhat along those lines, in relation to what you do, we're in the business of losing our jobs, as we all know. So, I think I'm friends with Phil McKinley and Richard Hines.
Yeah.
I was fully aware of those October to January dates for
Yes.
even Elf. But here's why I bring it up, because obviously, when we randomly book those kinds of jobs and we're bringing in anywhere between an additional $10,000 and $15,000 a month, there are real highs and lows um, of our industry. How do you both navigate that? So for example, um,
We
is
go
it
on
a safe?
vacation and then we don't.
Well, well, there you go.
Yeah.
So it's okay. So it's not. Um, to be explicit, Cliff, your salaries that come in from your acting jobs, those aren't going to pay the phone bill. So
Right.
there's expectation, there's like an understanding in your household, like, okay, my 9 to 5 takes care of the baseline, and then whatever we have gives us whenever you're working, which is a
Flexibility.
lot,
Yeah.
knock on
Yeah.
wood, you're always
Totally.
able to work a lot, that's able to be more supplemental overall. Does that sound
Right.
about right?
No, it totally is. I also ha started coaching randomly over the years, as most actors do, but then it kind of turned into my niche was we were living in Hell's Kitchen. I had done a world premiere musical out of town. Two of the kids in the show needed help with the self-tapes. I helped one for a pilot, one for Matilda and Matilda on Broadway. They both booked them. Then I turned into like this happened like in 2014 till now, turned into kind of this parents would literally be like, could you come to our apartment, do this self-tape for this pilot? And agents and managers started to have me work with their theatrical clients to kind of pull some of the over theatricality out of them to do a contained self-tape for Law and Order or a movie or something, an indie film. And it literally was, I would just be like, babe, I'm running down the street to Lilla Crawford's house, who was Annie on Broadway, was Little Red in the Meryl Streep Into the Woods, and I was like, are these parents kind of having me babysit them in the form of a self-tape coach? But I was the at-home, all these Broadway kids in Hell's Kitchen when we lived there. That's what I did, and
Amazing.
I would label the tape, compress the tape, send it off, CC the agent, CC the parent. The parents were like, this is amazing. A lot of those kids are now like in high school and college, but during the pandemic, we went to North Carolina and I was directing and choreographing a lot of kind of community-esque theater because they weren't in school. Now all those kids, I helped them all get into high school. I helped
Mm-hmm.
them all learn about what a self-tape is, industry standards, because the North Carolina, I'm from South Carolina. I had nobody like us growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of went into all these directions of pre-screens, self-tapes, difference between agent and manager. So many people, don't know those things. They don't really teach you that in college. And so my full side hustle has become that. And then when I get a Broadway job, all of that kind of goes away because I'm in rehearsals.
Of
But I do think
course.
the thing that makes me unique and us unique as coaches is that we still have a foot in the field.
Sure.
We're still changing with it to kind of show that a lot of people are out of it and not trying to do it anymore, and we see how quickly it's changing and shifting. So it was funny for the past few years, I've been doing a lot more developmental projects, not making a ton of money, but the coaching has been bringing in more money. And then when I go into Elf, and then I did Bull Durham right before that at Theater
Right.
Raleigh,
Right.
I wasn't really coaching anybody because I was working on those jobs. Was not with my family, did not enjoy not being with my family, but to have like Liza be able to come and see me in Elf, I got to go on for Santa and then play Buddy's dad. Like it was, Christmas was wild, but like such a joyful time. And then all my clients were waiting when I was done to rev things back up, soon as Elf closed. So we've kind of gotten this really flexible thing going, her working from home and me coaching sometimes from home and then also live in the city. It's like, hey, are you coaching today? I've got her. If you got to go into the city, if she has to go in for a day, I pick up Liza. So we've got like a really nice kind of balance.
Yeah. But tactically, as far as the money management goes, I pretty much think of it as what my salary is what we can spend and to
Yes.
live. And then, the extra that Cliff brings in consistently at this point, we use for fun things.
One of the things I'm always impressed with, relationships, specifically in this industry, is the consideration, communication, all that's needed to navigate, because I mean, my sense very much, Regina, is that you don't at all feel burdened by that. That's, you get it, you understand the circumstance, and in
Sometimes
fact,
she does. I think sometimes she did. When I'm doing developmental projects for $500, but as an actor saying
yes.
that it's gonna play out of town, come to Broadway, and I'm getting in at the ground basics, and I'm like, hey, this gig's like $500, and I'm not here at all this week, and you got to pick her up from school. There's burden
I
there.
mean, the burden of the being the breadwinner is stressful. I mean, that's very stressful. And, we've continued to increase our quality of life and our spend. And, whether it's a man or a woman in that position, it's just a tough position to be in, but like somebody has to do it. And,
Well,
Cliff's very supportive and helpful, and it works out.
well, if I may ask, I'd love to ask about that. Because you said, I can't remember if Cliff or Regina, you said it about your parents, Regina, sort of being like, what is this? What is this job? You're not going to those schools. So I guess, if you don't mind sharing, what the perception, as you, the man of the household, quote unquote. I know it's 2025, so, but I'm bringing it up because, is there at all that perception from your perspectives that your parents, Regina, are like, what do you mean? Why is Cliff still doing this job? And if so,
Yeah.
how does it make the both of you feel?
I mean, unfortunately, yeah, there probably is still a little of that. But on the other hand, both of our moms were the breadwinners in the
Mm,
family.
mm,
So it's like a little bit normalized for us. And funny
mm,
enough, too, my sister's also the primary in her
mm,
family. So for us, it's not that weird. But I do think there's a bit of like bitterness around, like why is my kid working so hard, and like he gets to
mm-hmm,
like do what he wants and like pursue his dreams, and like, then, what would I do if I didn't have to work? And, you kind of get into all that, but like, it is what it is. Again, like, I'm grateful that he does do what he does because it keeps me involved. And
mm-hmm.
like, I love it. Like, we plan our lives by shows, and like, I wouldn't want it any other way. So, I'm, happy, and mom's kind of calmed down about
And
it.
well, they're similar to her. When I'm in a thing, they're super excited and brag to everybody. When I'm in between things and I'm just
Yes,
coaching, which
yes.
sometimes coaching makes me more money than the Broadway
Yes,
job, they're
exactly.
just like, what is he doing? But we personally been in therapy about it. We've together in couples therapy figured a lot of it out. And it's a constant. I mean. It's funny because as she's saying that, like I feel like some men would be like breadwinner, like have ego about it. It's like I don't even feel any of that because I know if I was a series regular on a TV show or was sitting in a government job like Hamilton or Lion King, I would want that more than anything to just be like, girl, you take a break or like take
Yeah.
6 months off or 3 weeks off or whatever you want to do. Like,
Which I
get,
probably wouldn't
she
do.
probably wouldn't. She probably wouldn't. She loves her job. She really, I mean, she's a baller at it. But the funny thing about her is that none of her friends are corporate people. They're all theater.
Mm.
They're all our theater friends we met on that chorus line tour and the ones I continue to accrue. And we always make this joke that like I do the introductions and she holds on to the relationship. Hence her job, networking, connecting, relationships. Because people meet me and I'm kind and Southern and she's very New York and Italian. And then they stick around, I think, because of her. So
Mm.
it's we
But it's true what they say, right? If you're going to do theater, you better not want to do
anything
anything
else.
else. And I appreciate that about him. He's so steadfast in that. And I never was, like I was like, oh, that's cool. I got a job. Sweet. And,
She got out at the top of her career. She got her equity card and played the lead on the Bye Bye Birdie tour. She was the Cheetah Rivera
Oh,
role.
fun.
Yeah.
I love Baba Birdie.
Yeah, but yeah, like I had always been good at other things and knew I could capitalize on that. And I mean, Cliff is good at many things, but he's just never wanted to do anything else. And he's just like dead set on this and like, great. I mean, he's doing it.
She's helped me a lot network wise because I hear her. I'll never forget the day. I'll talk to her about different things like, oh, I was down to the import and then didn't get it, or I got it and now they're whatever. And she's like, something changed in the breakdown, something this, something that, because she deals so much with things changing so quick, people being right for jobs than not. And she has helped me have some really strong conversations with my agents, foster more relationships with casting because I hear how professionally and in a really nice, eloquent way that she does it all day long. We're not really taught that as actors. We're like, I
Mm.
did a gig with them. Wait, I'm supposed to be closer to the casting creatives, writer, producers than I am to the cast. Not knowing
Mhm.
that the cast isn't going to give you more jobs. It's those other people on the outskirts and fostering those relationships. And she's taught me a lot about that and or when things don't go my way, why there is a bigger thing at play and that it is business and it is not you and do not take that shit personally.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
And Liza, how old is Liza now?
about to turn 6.
Yeah.
6. Okay, so what is Liza's perception of your two very different professional worlds?
We've said she's gonna be real confused about work because she's like, my dad's sometimes working on Broadway. She considers it like, magic behind that stage door, meeting all these friends. I think at Elf, she was crying, being like, why does my dad have to be so famous? Which we're not, but she, to her little brain, was just
One
so.
night we were in the car going home and we had to leave him at the show and we had to go home. Why is my dad so famous? Like why is he there for everyone else and not home with us, right? So
Uh-huh.
there's like a little bit of that, but then I work from home, so she doesn't, I'm in like sweatpants and she doesn't really like see me going anywhere. So like I don't even know what she
What
thinks
she's
I
gonna
do.
consider work, like it,
Yeah.
and
But it's a very lucky situation. I mean, COVID was terrible for a lot of people and myself for a lot of reasons, but ultimately it gave me the opportunity to be remote and like be with her, on the times that I would have been commuting. And like that's just such a blessing.
And you started to talk about it, but how do you both juggle the unpredictability of schedule? Because it really is so wackadoodle, especially with Liza.
We have a shared calendar, and if it's
Yeah.
not on the calendar, it doesn't exist.
well, we even discovered that because when I was in Elf, she knew where I was and what I was doing and when I needed to leave and what train I was getting and what she could depend for me on and not.
He's
Now that we've been back, it always takes a little recalibration.
Yes.
And like, even the other day, she was like, I can't pick her up tomorrow. And I was like, well, I'm going to do this thing. She's like, but it wasn't on the calendar. So we've been giving each other grace, being like, and then it's funny because my calendar got filled up real quick when she started adding things.
Yeah. She's like, well, now that you're around.
No, yeah. So this is what I'm doing. These are the days you got to get her. But we've been pretty flexible. I mean, she holds down the fort, so I don't like to at all mess with her schedule. But there is some flexibility sometimes, where she's able to understand. You need to go into the city to take this meeting with this producer. It's hard for them to know. You see them once a year. I will go get her for you to take this meeting or go to this show with them or whatever that thing is. because she knows it will pay off in another way. When she's at the show in a year from now, and is like, all I had to do was pick up Liza that day for him to go and take that meeting and keep that connection up. Great, happy to do it. Um,
Well, I would argue again in this circumstance in particular, in comparison to the other folks who are speaking to this overall topic, you sort of have the best of both worlds because you both get it,
mhm.
you
Yeah,
both
if I wasn't a
understand.
theater person, I'd be like, what? Do you have to what?
You have to go where and
Right.
be around all these talented, beautiful people, and
Yeah, I would get it.
No, that's, I mean, and for many people, that is the case. They don't understand. I mean, there were many years when I didn't spend any Christmases with my family because I was
Mhm.
performing, and they don't know, and people don't
Get it. Yeah.
necessarily get that. So you have this where, again, just as an outsider looking in and of this brief conversation, Regina, where you're like, it's your word salve, to sort of be still part of it. And again, I would argue you're still staying connected with your own form of the arts.
She
Oh
just
yeah.
did a production of
Yeah.
Follies, by the way,
Yes.
Follies?
Just recently. Yeah, there's
Where?
Follies at
down
the
the street.
community theater in Glen Ridge, and I was
With
like new
Janet
show.
Aldrich
Yes.
and Kirk Woodward?
Woodward. I don't know if I know
How do you know
Kirk,
these
but I
people?
know Janet. Yeah, she's a big
S-
like Broadway girl.
Well, so I've known Janet. So Janet's a
She's
long-term friend
funny.
of mine. She is funny. She was in the original company of Annie.
Whoa.
And then did many things, Starmites and a show called Broadway with Lonnie. Anyway, I've known Janet for years, and when I was in the eighth grade, I went to high school in Montclair.
Oh, yeah, we're right here.
Yeah, so I know Jersey well, and Kirk, who I'm pretty sure actually was in it. I'm pretty sure he was in this because I was talking to Janet about it.
Well, what was he playing Buddy? Because we had like three different buddies at some point.
Kirk probably he's older, so
Yeah.
he very likely. I'm actually I'm as I'm talking to you, I'm going to his Facebook page because I even think I saw him post about it.
He
But
might have been our last buddy because we like literally had
Went
a lot of
through.
buddy turnover.
okay, well either way, so you're still performing.
We even laughed and we were like, can we get our show schedules together? Because my nights off, she would be going to rehearsal, which actually worked, but I was like, it's my night with you. And
Yes,
and the other funny part about it was, is like, my debut was in Follies at the Marquee Theater. I was back at the
yes,
Marquee Theater with Elf. She was doing Follies down the street, the
yes.
youngest girl by like 15, 20 years in the show. It was,
Quite a
it,
bit, but
it was, I loved it. And she worked on her audition with me.
oh
It was.
yeah. I mean,
Well,
it was cool. It was like fun to get back into it. The performances were cool. The rehearsals are a drag. And
She hates a rehearsal.
but
She just
she's
wants to
cool.
get there.
Well, hey, this sounds like it was probably a pretty killer community production of Follies, by the way. I mean, because you and
We had
Janet are the
friends
real
come and
deal.
they were like, is this like a regional production? Like,
Yeah,
what is this?
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, like half the show were professionals. So
yeah.
yeah, it was pretty good.
This has been great. This is more
Yeah.
than enough. Thank you. Hello again. Just me. Next up, last but certainly not least. Is that the saying? I'm doing this show right now where I say is least the last to join our cast. So I'm jumbling phrases. Anywho, we've got the wonderful Natasha Diaz and Andrew Nason. I learned in our conversation that they've actually known each other since the eighth grade, although it wasn't until 2007 when things sort of were actually kindled, semi rekindled, if there was a thing back then in the eighth grade. And really lovely combo between the two of them. Andrew was born in graduated high school in New York City, but attended the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. He started his career in journalism at a commercial news radio station in Wilmington, and then moved from radio to television, producing a nightly newscast that was seen in Delaware and the greater Philadelphia region. Then he moved to Washington, D.C., and was a producer and then managing producer at C-SPAN for 20 years before he moved to the think tank world as an assistant director for content. But along with his work in broadcast and journalism and communications, he's a visual artist, composer, sound designer, and editor. And we talk a lot about that, which makes sense for the one and only Miss Natasha Diaz, who's a tremendous artist and who I knew of well before I knew her, and she and I had the chance to work together. She's probably most known for her presence, as she has it here, which is a better word than performance, in the Broadway documentary Every Little Step. She's the one with that cute little bob, you know? So that's for many of you might have known her from. But she has worked forever and ever. After dancing the role of Anita with the New York City Ballet for their West Side Story Suites, which was helmed by Jerome Robbins, she actually was the last Anita ever to be handpicked by both Jerome Robbins and Arthur Lawrence in the subsequent national tour. And it was a breakout performance for her. Her Broadway credits include the companies of and many of the cast albums of some of these shows. Paul Simon's The Cape Man, Seussical, the revival of Man of La Mancha 2004. I loved that revival. Some off-Broadway credits include Tick, Tick, Boom, and the original cast of Stephen Sondheim's Saturday Night, as well as a wonderful production of Jacques Brel is Alive and Well and Living in Paris, as I saw at the Zipper. That was a terrific production. And she also appeared in the Grand Hotel for City Center Encores. And most recently was just appeared in this current running revival of Cabaret as Fräulein Kost. And then she has an extensive regional career, which is partially where we performed in Nick Blameyer's Soon at Signature Theater. But she's done a Little Night Music, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Rooms, The Three Penny Opera, Measure for Measure, Savage in Limbo. Oh, I saw her do Savage in Limbo. She was so good in that. Anyway, Natasha, a storied career up to this point, and it was great talking to her and Andrew to just get more insight into this world of celebrating, supporting the other on both sides of these mixed relationships. Enjoy.
Okay.
I did a reading with Bob Cuccioli the other day, and he didn't. It was my first time meeting him, but I said, "You have to know, Bob, how much that production of Jacques Brel meant to me, because it did." And over the years, you know. Because I've become quite close with Rick Hip Flores too, and over the years, there's so many people in my world who have all connected back to that amazing production of Jacques Brel. But the reason why I was babbling on about this, and Andrew, you should know, I jokingly said to Natasha, I said, I'll try to not make this, you know, just a segment where I show my super fandom of Natasha and all its glory. But actually, partially why I bring it up is, Andrew, have we ever formally met? Because I know you.
We have.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Okay.
We've met a few times at performances that Natasha was at. I believe we've met both in New York and here in the DC area. Yeah.
In New York?
I remember meeting you several times, going way back to probably the late aughts.
Okay.
Here and there. Yeah, and we've met once or twice. I can't don't ask me to tell you which performances, but I know that for sure we met each other at Signature down here.
Yes,
a few
probably
times.
Soon.
Maybe at a show Natasha did at the Zipper Theater and a couple other shows that she did up in New York. But yeah, I know that we have met in person before.
And when we did Soon.
Exactly.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Exactly.
He
exactly.
stopped the show. with his comic brilliance.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I've seen exactly. And I've seen him perform. He's a great performer.
So, well, let me say this. This episode called "Opposites Attract," looks at the lens of the artist and the quote unquote non-artist. But I'm really having to give that caveat here because Andrew, you're an artist, very much so. I know I don't know too much about your background, but and with the focus in communications and journalism, but you also are a writer, a composer, a sound designer. Yes.
Yeah, I do. I did come from a pretty musical and creative family. We can get into this later if you'd like, but I grew up in a family with two performers as parents.
Oh, we can get into it.
Yeah, we can get into that. But yeah, I do. I studied art in high school. I continued studying visual art in college while I got my degree in communications and minored in French. But yeah, I do visual art. I have a website that has some of my artwork on it. I do sound design for podcasts and for other projects. I compose music. I use Ableton Live. Yeah, so I'm a professional journalist, producer, and communications person, but I'm a lifelong artist. So we do have that in common for sure.
And
Well-
his he won't say this, but well, he was going to say it later. But his mom played in the pit of Radio City for 25 years. So
Really?
he grew up around the Rockettes.
Oh,
and She
amazing.
was like when they would fly up and down.
Yes.
That was his mom. Yeah.
Yes.
So he was backstage with the girls, and I mean, he was like 7, right?
I was like 10 years old.
10 years old. But and Joshua, I'll send you. We could actually probably send you a clip of this, but his father and my father sang together
Wow.
before either of them met our mothers.
Wow. How did you discover that?
Well, there's a very healthy scrapbook that my dad kept and my mom was aware of, and Justino Diaz, the great operatic baritone,
of course.
and my father, who was a tenor, more of the oratorio variety, sang together. And there's a it's not a playbill, but there's a notice in a local Rochester, New York newspaper that lists them as both being in one of Bach's large choral works, and they have their pictures. And my mom, after Natasha and I reconnected years after we graduated high school, my mom reminded us that our parents our dads sang together. And so that's part one of the story. We knew this had happened. We had documentation to prove it. We had photos. But just about 3 or 4 months ago, I discovered an audio recording that I didn't know existed from the 1900s of them singing together.
Of
Wow.
that concert that was reviewed.
Yeah.
Wild.
And they actually sang together more than once, but I have some excerpts of them recording together. It's actually pretty good for being so old. It's really cool.
And my dad was like, "You don't have that recording. You don't have that." But Andrew's been going through all his reel-to-reels from his father.
Yes.
And sure enough, there it was, the
Wow.
entire concert.
Wow.
And so he clipped it out. I could send it to you, a clip of his dad and my dad singing.
Yeah,
back to-
please
it was
do.
one
I'd
of my
love to share
dad's-
it. I'd love to share
It was one of my dad's first gigs in the States. I mean,
Wow.
he hadn't even he hadn't even gone to the Met yet. He hadn't even
Well,
won the Met
if that
audition
wasn't
yet.
the sign,
Yeah.
I
mean, it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, it's
Well,
pretty extraordinary.
Go
And so
ahead,
for
Andy.
the record, we're talking about the St. Matthew Passion by Bach. Justino Diaz, baritone, was
Playing
Jesus, of course.
A bass Jesus.
And my dad was the tenor playing the evangelist. Yeah.
So
it's pretty cool.
so you mentioned high school. So this was a question. When did you both meet, and what initially drew you to the other?
Oh, he was the bad boy.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We were in eighth grade together. Eighth grade. It was only 1 year.
Ninth grade.
I had
ninth
no
grade.
clue.
Ninth grade, and Andrew was very much the bad boy. He was, with the beatboxing and the little duster mustache, and like the smoking the cigarettes on the corner and everything. He was. I'll let him.
I don't know if we can find a picture of that, Joshua, but we'll try.
So yeah, no, he was the James Dean of our class.
Yes,
And of
yes.
course, I
Wow.
was like, and I don't know how anybody thought I was cute in high school. I had short hair. I dyed the front of it blonde.
Just the
I was a
front.
big Dran fan.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He thought I was cute. We
Yes,
hung
I
out.
did. Yes, I did. And she was the most dynamic, creative, and artistic person in that school by far. And there were a lot of dynamic and creative people in that school. So yeah.
And we would like, we would like we would call each other, or he would call me, or I would call him, and we would break night. For everyone out there, breaking night means spending the night
Yes.
together outside, like breaking night.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that was a memory that sort of really resonates through time, because we watched the sun come up on his roof, and then we went to school.
Okay, so wait, so that's a long time. Without knowing
Oh,
your
yeah.
relationship
Oh, yeah.
history, have there been gaps in between? Were you guys always
Oh,
together?
no. As a matter of fact, I thought,
There was quite a gap. There was,
yeah,
there was a lengthy gap.
I thought he would be like, dead under a bridge somewhere, because he was such a
Such a bad
he was
boy.
such like a, you know, he was like a scrappy,
Yeah.
always hitting the streets, and but like, I didn't know, but there was like, when I came to DC to do Carnival, I had been actually it was during Jacques Brel that he and I started to speak again.
So
I think he saw
2003-ish, 4-ish?
after that 2007.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, 2007.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, yes, I got a message from him on my old website. I would get messages from people from, like kindergarten, and like, oh, I don't know if you remember me. And one of the
Randos.
and one of the messages was from him. And I was like, Andrew Nason, Andrew Nason.
My James
Oh my
Dean.
God. So it took me a minute. But then, because he had seen what I looked like after how I turned out, but
Sure.
I didn't know how he turned out.
Yeah.
So I had been, as everyone knows, everyone is chronically single in New York, because it's impossible to meet people. So I was in Jacques Brel, and Andrew and I started talking. He was living and working here, working at C-SPAN as one of their main producers. And I so happened to get Carnival at the Kennedy Center. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get to see him, right? So I came, and we were like dancing around, like when we should first see each other. And I was like, well, I'll have a day off. And it was like just after Valentine's Day. So I'm sure neither of us wanted to be like, oh, we don't want to meet on Valentine's Day.
Right.
We had some great talks, So he came and picked me up, and he got out of his car, and I fell on the pavement because, I remember this like 13-year-old boy,
Mm-hmm.
and this man walked out of the car, and it was just unbelievable. It was unbelievable. We had an amazing time, and Andrew came to see the show, right? You brought your family and friends?
Well, I came by myself. I think a friend of mine went to see the show before I did.
Carnival.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This was at the Kennedy Center, and I didn't really thought about I guess it's an advantage I had having seen pictures of you, and you were in the public eye, and I kind of knew. I wasn't as surprised when I saw her, but it didn't really occur to me she didn't have anything to go on except for that sort of yearbook picture from years before. So yeah,
Which we actually have.
we have that too. We'll try to dig that up. But yeah, so she was, but I had not seen her at all, much less perform, in many years. Even when we were in high school together, she was already, not surprisingly, a very accomplished performer for her age, and we saw her perform at high school functions and things like that. And I knew that even then she was a very serious and dedicated performer. But this was the first time when I saw the show Carnival that I'd seen her in a full-fledged professional production, and I was just blown away. I was blown away. I felt like she was the focal point of every scene she was in, whether she was actually on or not. And that just helped to cement sort of the excitement I had when we reconnected years ago. It
Well,
was awesome.
well, I fully believe that
yeah.
that she
Oh,
was
yeah.
no. Oh, is that the picture?
Around when
Oh, that's at the Kennedy Center, I think.
opening night.
Wait, I can't hear Natasha. Will you either narrate or
When he
give
came
it?
to opening night.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that picture too. And you, of course, you were
Yeah.
the Anna Maria Alberghetti part. I don't know the show that well. I just know Anna Maria.
No. I
Alberghetti.
was like the saucy
Oh yes, of
whatever. Yeah,
course.
the magician's assistant, and I
Yes.
had to do all these dangerous, like really scary, like bed of nails falling. Like I mean, like swords through the box, all that stuff. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, that was the beginning, and that was 2007.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
then 2008, I came here to do Spider-Woman.
Right. And then when did you do Sweet Charity, Natasha?
Oh, that's
Before.
that. Yeah, that was
Okay.
that was 2005.
Well, the reason I
think,
ask
maybe
is
even before that.
the reason I ask is because you both live in Virginia. I think not far from Signature, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
And of course, yet you still perform all over. You just finished a stint in cabaret.
Yes.
How do you both navigate those periods apart?
Well, here I'll you could start.
Well, first of all, I've been lucky to I think with the exception of maybe one gig that you did, which was On Your Feet.
At the Muni.
Every time she has performed out of town, whether it's in Oklahoma City or Atlanta or San Francisco or Zurich, Switzerland or New York, I've traveled to see the show and spend some time with her.
Yeah.
And that's been great. But it's also just, as you might expect, it's a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of video calls, a lot of texting. And I'm busy. I'm very, very busy, and she's very busy. So it's just a lot of staying in touch through, our phones and me coming to visit her whenever I possibly can. And during this last stint when she was on Broadway, she was actually able to come down here once or twice. And I've been up to New York probably more times this past year than I have in a very long time.
Of course.
It's like every other week.
And
Of
it's
course.
but I do say that the cabaret time was probably the hardest. Only because he'd come to see the show, and of course when I went on for Schneider, it's like, oh my God, come now, because she's never out. So I
Right.
was like, okay, come now. So, but I would have so little time and energy outside of the
course.
show that there was really like no reason to be there, especially for him to miss work
Of course.
or for him to you know what I'm saying? So that was a little hard. I haven't really ever had to be away more than 3 months. So that was, I've actually been thinking about that, Joshua, because it's, if I get a tour or something, you definitely have to bake in, I'd say every 3 weeks to a month.
Yeah.
But when I was in San Francisco doing Follies, that was for 4 months. And I really needed to be like, look, I need to make sure this is in my voice. I need to make sure that it's, because that was a more difficult vocal role and something I never wanted to, never thought I could do. So I really needed to make sure that I had my routine down and had the, so then once I'm all solid, then he can come. But sure, we're also, we met, I guess, older. I don't know. So there's a you can
maturity.
Yes,
A
you can
groundedness.
feel when
Yeah.
you can feel when it is too long, but we're not like, we're not like, oh, I need you to breathe. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But yeah, it's we've found a balance so far. But definitely last year, I feel like I hardly saw him. That was for the first time since we've been together. That was true.
with what you are, willing to share about this or not, kind of piggybacking off of that, has the conversation around kids ever come up, and and did your professional worlds play a role in the decision to not pursue or to potentially pursue?
I think in a word, yes. I think in a word, our professional lives did play a role in that. There's a lot more to it, of course, but
Of
I would
course.
say sure it did.
Yeah.
Very busy, and the job I had. I'm not trying to skirt the question. The job I had for the last 2 years was so busy. It was more demanding time wise than any job I'd ever had before. And just to go back to this idea of going up to New York to visit, even when I did come up to New York, she was so involved with the show. And just being on Broadway, it's a whole different kind of animal than being in any other kind of show. You are sort of living this very disciplined, almost monastic kind of life where even when I came up to visit, it's like it wasn't like playtime, so but I'll let you talk about just the sort of the work life balance in that respect.
I mean, I had wanted to, Joshua, but again, because we met late, it didn't seem like it was in the cards.
Yeah.
And also, like you said, also professionally, I literally have felt like I've saved myself in some really self-destructive kind of way for this business. Do you know what I mean?
Understand,
To
yes.
make sure that I was always available, make sure that I'm ready, and I applaud my friends who do have kids and who have done that. I just never, it just didn't, it wasn't aligning
Yeah.
for me and for us. Yeah, so
It's why I partially ask, because there is undoubtedly sacrifice that comes along with being any kind of artist. But then, obviously with a consideration like that in a relationship, it of course that's exactly why I partially ask that. Socially, how have you navigated the merging of these different circles? Because I know your world specifically so well, Natasha.
Yeah.
And have you found that to be an easeful process, or something that was like, oh my gosh, people don't know that they're just two different kinds of people,
Go ahead.
I think that the Natasha's world, meaning the sort of performing world, is a world that I felt very familiar with because of the sort of the parents I had, the environment I grew up in, and Joshua, I still harbor notions of being a professional performer or artist. So I find navigating the world of performer, of artist, of musician to be rather comfortable, and it feels normal to me.
But I will say, if it's okay to say, that for a long time, because of the work he was doing in the at C-SPAN in the corporate world, that he felt like he needed to keep them separate. And for professional reasons, which is I think is actually very good reasons in terms of his own, like Instagram, or things that you talk about or tweet about or whatever. There's, if you're being not watched, but you have a certain persona in this arena.
You hold the mic a
And then
little,
you
just a little
have- I mean,
closer to your
that's-
mouth.
Oh, sorry. I mean, that's the really special thing about Andrew anyway, is that he really can go completely from the center of like a sort of a corporate world to like bam, right in the middle of an artistic ideas and music, art. So they've been very separate. So I think it's been to at first, I'm going to say this. At first, it's like, oh, your actor friends, and oh, your, whatever. But then it's like, oh no, I'm coming out with you. you know, because because everyone loves Andrew.
Yeah.
He's funny.
Yeah.
He's interested in everybody. So, he makes people lean forward, even like performers. So I think it took him a while to sort of like warm up to the fact that, like, yeah, everybody does respond to you as the artist you are inside, that you don't necessarily show all the time in your corporate world. So it must be, it's a very interesting thing to have to navigate. Now that I think about it, it's for him, it's a very,
Well,
interesting.
can I ask you a follow-up question kind of off that, Andrew? One theme that I've noticed in having these conversations is that the person in the relationship that is this is my full-time job as, artist, actor, whatever, that the other sort of tends to feed off of that ongoing creativity. Is that true for you too, Andrew, that there's something in, because listen, the truth is that, I mean, all joking aside, Natasha, you truly are a one of a kind, dynamic, unique force and energy. That's just the truth, per your point, Andrew, of saying, watching her, in that show, and seeing that I, no doubt, that's undeniable. So is there something in that for you too, that's like, yes, I am an artist, and having this person who's constantly surrounded by that, it somehow fuels you as well?
It fuels me, but there's an interesting distinction in that, in her career, I think it's very tough to point to any time in her life when she wasn't either in a show or pursuing a show. She has taken no breaks, pretty much ever. And I think the thing I will try to humbly say, I think I'm a very creative person, with a lot of creative outlets,
And ideas of different kinds.
Ideas, and
Yeah.
and I'm more of a multimedia artist and less of a performer. So the discipline and the work that she puts in is more inspiring and something that I feed off of than the creative piece of it, because I feel very
Yes.
close to my own sort of creative
Yes.
ideas and well springs. But it's seeing not only the work and the discipline that gets put into it, but the collaboration required with other like-minded people that in my professional world exists, but not nearly to the same degree that it does in the performing arts world, where you have people who are getting together, who know how to do a very specific set of things around concepts that are, very challenging, very creative, and every show has its own sort of creative challenges to it. And that's a level of sort of creative endeavor that is easy to appreciate as as an audience member or as a theater fan or an art fan, but to actually be this close to seeing how it actually gets put together is a whole different level of inspiration. So it's more kind of that proximity to the sort of the
work.
high grade professional production and work required.
Yeah.
Surely inspiring. Absolutely.
Well, what I did not know about the two of you, but I did know, Natasha, about you, is that your whole worlds have been art, meaning obviously your family, Natasha, that I'm your sister, your dad, mom, everyone's an artist. And Andrew, it sounds like the same is actually kind of very much true for you in terms of your own upbringing. And it's of actually no surprise to me that the two of you then are have amalgamated in this creative, supportive, um, uh, decade-long way in many ways. Because that, right? It's going to nearly be 20 years since you've reconnected in 2 years.
Holy
Isn't that
moly.
crazy?
That is crazy.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
have to plan something. We'll have to plan something special for that.
Yes. A full
Skydiving.
family
A
live
trip out of
show.
America.
What did you say?
jumping.
Sorry.
A trip out of America.
A trip out of America. Fair.
Maybe, I don't know, Europe somewhere.
I was
But,
going to say like the Nason Diaz, like spectacular or something like that.
Well,
on
listen,
the
Joshua,
Millennium
speaking about
stage.
Nason Diaz, I have very often thought about changing my name.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, why and why haven't you?
Well, because I think many would say it's too late because I've been Natasha Diaz for too
Mhm.
long.
Sure.
And as proud as I am of my dad and, who I am, DNA wise, Diaz has never really felt like me at all, ever. I mean, ever.
Interesting.
Yeah. It always just felt so like zazzy and so like harsh, and it just didn't ever feel like me. But Natasha Nason really
Yes.
is there's an alliteration in there that is really lovely. And maybe since we're living in the who gives a fuck about what people say, I want to do something that's nice. Maybe I will change my name one day because I think it's I just like the way it sounds, and it it was never it's just something I always thought about. But thank God for him because all the heartbreak we go through and all of the ups and downs and rejections and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And his presence and his he's curious about everything. He's interested in the world and in things. He will stop the TV and just talk about what he's been saying because he needs his own podcast. But that's a whole other show.
Nason News.
But so he really gets me out of my tunnel vision, tunnel visionness, and it's very nice. It's very nice because he's a beautifully rounded human being, with the talents, but also the intelligence and the curiosity in what's going on, and to be able to articulate it and discuss it. He was in radio for a while. He writes as well. So it's, this is someone who is interested in the world and interested in process, interested in people, and synthesizing and presenting ideas, whether it be on a canvas, whether it be in a piece of music, whether it be in a piece he's writing. And that very much speaks to my, I when I approach my own work, I love to work archetypally. I love the archetype of it all. This sort of the overview of, it's not just the line, not just oh, she dies at the end, but there's what you represent. And I think Andrew has such a very dynamic and diverse awareness and view. It's in his art too. It's his lens on the world, I think, is really sticky. It's really engaging. It's the way he synthesizes thoughts and ideas about what's happening. I've still been encouraging him to do like an installation, with that combines music and his visual art, his video. But again, you only have so many hours in the day, and so there's a lot to consider. But certainly, I would say he is much more of an artist than I am. I mean, much more.
High praise from an artist that in many ways I think out artists us all.
Joshua,
do you
I will
ascribe to
accept
that, Andrew?
it. I will accept her comments and not make any amendments to them. two things occurred to me. One is that if, and this is not, this may sound judgmental. It is not in any way meant to sound that way. If two performing artists become life partners who are even as close to dedicated to what they do as Natasha is, I can absolutely see that the amount of oxygen that effort takes up would make it very hard to sort of branch out and think about, spend time with, things other than the performing arts, your job, your next job, your current job, the craft, the business. And another thing is that when you recently at this concert down in Washington, D.C., and we ran into a very well-known soprano, very well-known operatic soprano, one of the best. And I didn't realize that her husband was a surgeon. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting.
Graves.
Yeah, Denise Graves.
When I was doing the American Pops Orchestra at the Library of Congress. Yeah.
And that struck me as sort of a text, like a cover couple for this idea of someone who is, at the pinnacle of their craft as a performing artist, and then someone else who is at the pinnacle of their craft doing something completely different, who's like an operating room surgeon. But I think, part of it is it's written in the stars, and it's kismet, and it's who you're attracted to, and timing. I didn't set out to think, I'm going to choose someone in the performing arts. It doesn't happen that way. But as Natasha said, it's not always easy to meet people, much less people you want to be a life partner with. So it's certainly understandable you would find people in your line of work. But
I always had a feeling that the person I was going to be with, I already knew. And I didn't know why I had that feeling, but I did. All in my
I learned so much from these conversations myself, about myself and my partner who is an artist, but just I learned so much. And one of the things that I'm always struck by with these kinds of partnerships, and that seems so present in your relationship, is understanding, communication, support, cheerleading. Because we've said this, both of you understand how difficult the world is, but how difficult it is at this stage, and late stage capitalism, and in a digital age, what it means to be an artist and to, fight for relevancy and to find your place in the world. It's hard. Yeah. So forget all the logistics of, can we go to Aunt Sylvia's, get together next week, because do you have that callback or not? Forget that. Yeah. Just the basics of the day to day. And it's what I'm taking away from this conversation. And so thank you for being so open and transparent and willing to share. It means a lot.
Oh, our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Yay. Yeah, Josh, it's, you write it. It's not always happy and fun. Whatever you choose comes with its challenges, and there's things that we have to be patient with one another about in our own thing. But I will defend his artist core and its right to propel itself forward in the world until my last breath, because that's what I believe in.
Yes.
But then we also have to eat, and then we also have to pay the rent, and, and certainly I'm not taking charge of that. You know what I mean? So, but he respects, like, the respect for the way I approach it. And it's a luxury. It's a luxury to have this kind of love and support. And
it's such a
You know what I like about these episodes, where we get to get a little perspective from multiple folks? You can't help but learn something. I mean, I learn something all the time. think Mike and I both do in all of this work, but especially this podcast, just reflecting and asking questions and trying to understand. And while this episode's been, really different from our episode on starting a family as an artist, one thing that is true in these duos, in these relationships, is understanding, communication, support. There's clearly paths that have to be explored in terms of bumps that come up, but you lean into them and you communicate along the way, and hopefully you can avoid a lot of the mishigas that comes with a lack of communication, or, as we've sort of somewhat been exploring in this episode today, kind of sometimes clashing of worlds, two different worlds coming together or apart. But I think that all of these couples have been emblematic of empathy and appreciation and love and joy, and that's really moving to me. So and I didn't ask this of any of them, but I think sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, I can only ever be with another artist because they get it, or I can't be with an artist at all because I just need someone so outside that world. And I think those binaries are fine, but I think that Missy and Matt and Andrew and Natasha and Regina and Cliff all give us insight and perspective into what's possible, and it's even more so than that, an appreciation for what the other has and how that can even offer something to themselves. So thank you to all of them for those conversations and sharing so openly and transparently. I'm going to do my own singular comfort food performance today, since I tend to not ask our guests when there are multiple. And I recently rewatched Something Gotta Give. Something's Gotta Give. What's Gotta Give? Something's Gotta Give. Something's Gotta Give. That makes sense. What? Something Gotta Give. With Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton, and Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is so funny to me. Whenever I see Keanu Reeves in a movie, I'm like, what's going on? What are you doing here? Oh yeah, you're around. Is that a hot take? I don't know. Anywho, I forgot how much I love that movie, and Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton are both in it. I mean, it's kind of like one of those movies that's like the story of rich white people, right? Like they're on. I think actually one of the shots looked like they were in Provincetown, so they must be on the Cape. It's supposed to be more. It must be on the Cape. I can't remember because she's in the movie. She plays like this famous playwright. Anyway, it's a movie for rich white people, which I am not. But that's kind of, like with the comfort of those movies when you're sort of like, this is nice. This nice life. I want to live that life those rich white people are living. That's the kind of vibe the movie's giving. But I love it. And I thought Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton are great in it. Period. That's my comfort food performance, which I kind of somehow feels fitting for this episode on relationships. It feels like a rich white person episode. I don't know what that even means. Okay, bye-bye.